right. Hey, welcome back. This is our second video. My name's Ryan. I work at New Creation Counseling Center in Tip City. This is Vicky Kettering. She's one of our counselors. And for our second video, we're going to be talking just for a few minutes. The other day I had approached Vicky and I said, if I sat you down in front of the camera and asked you to talk about something for 5 minutes, what would you want to talk about? And she said, about how much God loves you. And so I was just gonna ask her a little bit about that. So Vicky, who are you? You're a counselor here, and you were telling me kind of what you do, and who the heck are you?
Some days I wonder. I'm a counselor, mental health counselor. Been a counselor for 20 years. Started working only with kids, and now I work both with children and adults. Do a wide variety of counseling on a number of issues and problems. Seem to be kind of specializing at this point in PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. People have been through trauma. Often it's abuse of some kind or other sorts of sexual assaults and such.
And you told me a minute ago that somehow kind of leads you to the topic of self-esteem a lot when you're working with clients.
It does.
And when we talked about making this video, you kind of were linking God's love to self-esteem. So let's get to that. You wanted to talk about how much God loves you.
Right.
Just let her rip.
Okay, so basically when I'm speaking with a client, trying to help a client through trauma or depression or anxiety, often I find the core issue is they have a low sense of self-worth. Often because of the messages they've received over their lives through all the traumatic things that have happened, the rejection and so on. So I eventually get to helping them with that. And how I do that, I usually start off with a story. If the person is open to their faith relationship with God and working on their self-esteem. The story is called You Are Special, and it's written by Max Lucado, minister, who's written a lot of stuff, including children's things. The story is an allegory, so while it looks like a little picture book for kids, I don't read it to little kids. I read it to teenagers and adults, and it helps them understand how much God loves them. So the story goes, there's little wooden people this wood carver makes, and all the wooden people are giving each other stars and dots, compliments and put downs. The main character in the story only gets the put down, so he's feeling really lousy about himself. He eventually goes to visit Eli in the workshop. Eli tells him, which of course is God, and Eli tells him several things, which are really messages that God is telling each person. First of all, he knows us all by name. He knows us really well. He made us. He also thinks we're really special. He doesn't care what other people think about us, and he tells us we shouldn't care either. We should care only about what God thinks of us. And then he says what he thinks is we're special. He loves us unconditionally and infinitely. Then I go on to tell clients, in order to get kind of a handle on that, because infinite is like a concept we can't get, I usually use the analogy of Niagara Falls. I've been to Niagara Falls a couple times. Most of the people I speak with have been there at least once. And I tell them it's huge, and it's lots of water, and it's loud, and it's wet, and I say, but the most impressive thing for me was going up to the river before the falls goes over the falls, because the river is big, it's wide, it's a river, it's not just a little stream, and it's deep, and it's very fast. So what struck me was the power. And there's millions of gallons of water falling over that falls every minute. I say, that's how much God loves you. And so all of that impact is like, wow, that's a lot. And it never stops. And I said, so if this God who created the universe and keeps it running loves you that much, you got to have some worth. You got to have value. So that's your foundation. It never changes. He always loves you no matter what you do or don't do, whether you love him back or not.
So you kind of try to get people to a place where I have worth, I have value, and that's this core thing that never really gets questioned. I mean, like you really, and you got and really establish that, and then I guess build on that.
Right. I call it, that's the foundation. can't go lower than that. You know, no matter what happens in your life, that's it. When you go the lowest, you're right there, and God's right there holding you up.
So when you talk to people about, you know, God loves you and that's you really want to get them to this place, like where do people typically get hung up in terms of getting that established in their heart that, you know, God loves me, I have worth. You know what I'm asking? Like where do people usually struggle with that?
Often it's, of course, the messages they've received over their lifetime, especially as children. And again, this is where the PTSD comes in, or any trauma. And they were given messages that, you know, you're worthless, or you're just an object, or you're less than worthless, you're terrible, you'll never amount to anything, you know, over and over and over. And these things are kind of wired in their brain. And so this requires a whole lot of rewiring.
You know, Charles was kind of getting into some of this last week about developmental trauma and things like that. And there's trauma A, trauma B. You know, I think about this a lot. Where, say, a kid when someone was a child, they no matter what they did, if their chores were to clean the house or clean this, you know, the message they always got was, well, you missed this spot, and nothing they ever did was good enough.
Right.
They developed some real core beliefs about themselves that no matter what I do, it's not enough.
It's not enough, right?
That's a powerful kind of wiring, I guess, that you really have to work against and practice. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I mean, we're talking about things people have learned and believed their whole life.
And they don't want to believe, by the time they come here, they don't want to believe those things anymore. And when I bring the truth of God to them, they go, oh, so, and I tell them, people told you were worthless, they lied. That wasn't the truth, and they have to believe that over and over. They have to rewire the brain. They have to think, that's not true, this is true. So that gets into a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy and that sort of stuff.
That's the work they do in therapy, is learning how to believe that truth over and over again.
And bring some peace into those memories. Those were bad, scary memories. Bringing some peace to that, either God's presence in that memory or the presence of someone who could protect them, and that helps soften, decrease the triggering, and starts to rewire what's going on in their head about who they believe they are and what is safe and what's not safe in their world.
Well, that's great, man. You know, God says, as he thinks in his heart, so is he, and just so much that he talks about what we believe, and that's why I find this so interesting. Is we learn to believe things, you know, and then that's the work we have to do as adults, is challenge those lies that they come so easily because we learn them so well. And so there is some work to do to challenge that, but it's doable. You've seen lots of people kind of get out from underneath those things.
I have.
Absolutely. All right, well, we will leave it at that. So, Vicky, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us. Guys, thank you for watching a second in a series of award-winning, I made that joke last time, but thank you. We got a great response to the first video. Keep watching. We're going to provide good content for you. Take care.